and Zoning Commission special meeting. Today is Thursday, February 27, 2025. The time now is 5:32 p.m. We're meeting in Council Chambers, City Hall Building, 100 South Monroe Street, Eagle Pass, Maverick County, Texas. We'll begin by establishing quorum. Today we have Luis Velez, myself, Tiffany Velasquez, and Noe Rodriguez. Absent, we have Aaron Valdez and Kenneth Gross. Next up is Citizens Communications. Do we have anybody in this one?
Favors none submitted.
Okay. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of January 23rd, 2025. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Unanimous. New business, item number 2, consideration possible action on the master plan amendment of Eagle Pass Port of Entry Industrial Park composed of 11.077 acres.
Ms. Tiffany, just to clarify, the acreage is incorrect.
Okay.
It's approximately 14 acres, and it's corrected on the actual report.
Okay, but I do have the right agenda, because there was one that was corrected,
Okay.
right, or no?
Yes.
Is it-
I have 11 on mine.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
it's 14.
so it's 14?
Yes. So what you have before you is a master plan amendment approval for Eagle Pass Port of Entry Industrial Park consisting of approximately 14 acres. The applicant and developer being Mr. Paco Mondragon. Location being off of Industrial Spur 2 near Loop 480 and abutting the railway to the rear and near International Bridge 2. The property is currently serviced and access to the site is provided by Industrial Spur 2. And here you have the master plan, just for, let me see if I can get a location that I had. Here you go. So this is the location of the site, just so you'll be familiar. Let me go to the... So the recommendation from our department is that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant the master plan amendment of Eagle Pass Port of Entry Industrial Park consisting of approximately 14 acres, subject to the plan to comply with the provisions of City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Section 23-13.1, governing subdivision plat submittal requirements, and I'll open it up for questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
So what's the amendment?
So before, I should have included what was presented to you all before, and if I'm not mistaken, it was just the bottom portion. Sorry? Oh, just the bottom portion. So now he implemented the top, which is Lot 2 on that map, and also what you have here on the left-hand side. That was also implemented, and this down here, underneath Lot 2. So that's what's being incorporated into the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3, consideration possible action on the final plat of Eagle Pass Port of Entry Industrial Park Lot 2, including a subdivision variance from Section 23 to 36A, regulating preliminary plat requirements.
So you may be familiar with this plat. This was brought to you previously, and the only difference here is the acreage. So it was bumped up to 10 acres. As of before, it was 7 acres, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Again, it's the same area. Here you have the site, the plat drawing. Here's a zoomed in of the plat. And here you have some site photos. Again, the applicant, again, being Mr. Paco Mondragon, and this is pretty much what you saw in the previous master plan amendment. Access again through Industrial Spur 2, Industrial Boulevard. And the recommendation from the city staff is that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant the subdivision variance to proceed directly to final plat without first having obtained preliminary plat approval as required by City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Section 23-36A, and two, grant final approval of the proposed Lot 2 in Eagle Pass Port of Entry, Industrial Park Subdivision Unit 1, subject to the plat complying with the provisions of Article 3 of City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Governing Procedures and Specifications for Final Plats. And that concludes the report, and I'll open it up for questions.
So it's just moving it from 7 to 10 acres.
That's
That is
correct.
We couldn't fit, and so we extended it directly, and because all utilities and everything is ready on site, that's the reason that we requested to go direct to final, because there's no improvements that need to be there.
Any other questions? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Item number 4.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Item number 4, consideration and possible action on the plat amendment of Lot Number 1 in Block 1 of Enchanted Ridge Subdivision Unit 4 and the replat of Lot 1 in Block 1 of Enchanted Ridge Subdivision Unit Number 4, including a sidewalk waiver from Section 23 to 64, regulating sidewalks, curb, and gutter.
Thank you. For this item, the applicant, Ken Dirksen with Dirksen Engineering is here with us in representation of KO Storage property owners. This is off of Veterans Boulevard between Cenizo Trail and Maria del Refugio Street. The request is to amend the setbacks, and the goal of that is to match existing conditions. There's existing storage structures on the site, and they're encroaching on what the original setbacks stipulated on the original plat state. The parcel size, 6.642 acres, it's zoned B1. Here's a couple of street views. I think we all probably drive by this pretty often on North Veterans Boulevard. Here's a view of the plat. So the section that we're really looking at here is the top along the Cenizo Trail property boundary. Let's see if I could zoom in anymore.
What's this?
I was trying to zoom in a little bit more. Let me see if I do it this way. It doesn't, stays a little bit blurry this way, but, so, I'll point it out to you since it's gonna be hard to read on the screen there, but there's this existing structure here, and there's a 10 feet setback detail listed here, and that's the amount of space there is between the building and the property line. And then similarly, this is a newer one that's built fronting Veterans at the corner of Cenizo. And similarly, there's also a 10-foot building setback detail listed right here where the cursor's showing. And the original plat stated a 20 feet setback along this area. And these two structures are obviously within that 20 feet, so they're seeking to amend that to essentially make it compliant or legal in its existing location. So we don't have a big, issue with that. They're typically, along fronting to Veterans, we would kind of look at this, and especially the one at the corner of Cenizo and Veterans, as side yard. And 10 feet is the typical side for corner lots like that. So it's in line with what we would normally see for commercial businesses fronting, a boulevard like this. But again, the detail that they're trying to correct is that the original plat showed 20 along that, and I believe that may have been because for like the rear lot, Cenizo Trail was the front. That was the front yard, so I think that's maybe why that was listed with a 20, and then I guess they just kept it consistent all the way down to the corner. So, so again, with the the request or what's being done here, we don't have a concern with that, but whether we do want to get into some additional details just of the mechanism or to try to figure out the best way to resolve this. So I don't know if you could see it a little bit better on this version. I'll try to zoom here. But you can see it's a little bit wider here than 10, showing the 20 that was originally listed on there when it was just 2 large tracks. It was later replatted to have 4 different tracks in the front, and then the rear one stayed 1 large track. When that was done, they attempted to change the setback there to 10 from the history that Mr. Dirksen gave us, but it was not, the original setback was not vacated. So that's some of the details of how we got to where we are. Again, it's a fairly unique situation. We don't get into this scenario too often, and we are trying to figure out what's the best way to assist with clearing this up. So we have some details here. I'll read off for you. This has to do with sidewalks. The other request that's part of this application is a subdivision variance to have the lots be, or the sidewalks be built out at the time of lot development. So whenever those other 3 vacant parcels fronting veterans are built. We have the recommendation listed here is to deny that waiver request and start the 18-month process, which should have actually taken place in the past. Ordinance states when a subdivision is developed, if the sidewalks are not built out within 18 months, then the developer should come in and complete them, or there's some city processes where the city would either come in and do them themselves or charge the developer a fee for not having those sidewalks. So we're trying to get more sidewalks completed, especially in developed areas like this. We have people that walk, jog, or even maybe try to go to school or work on bike or foot, and this is an area where I think sidewalks would make a big impact to the community. We do understand, though, there's scenarios where we do wait for the lot development, so we understand if we want to be a little bit lenient on the sidewalk part and wait for development. I think that's something, the commission wants to consider that. And then so the other part is actually the plat amendment itself. So the mechanism of how to fix the problem. So when we researched the plat amendment and we discussed it with city attorney, there's provisions in ordinance on the plat amendments, which are here. Do you guys see on your screen what I have up here?
Yes.
Okay. So there's several reasons or several things that you could do to amend a final plat, or reasons to amend a final plat, and they're listed before you, starting here with number 1, to correct an error in distance shown, add a course or distance that was omitted, correct an error in the description, indicate monuments. There's several things, but none of these are, I guess, the reason that they're looking for to amend this plat here. And then the closest we saw would be number 9, to relocate 1 or more lot lines. In this case, they're not actually relocating the lines, but they're just seeking to change some of the restrictions, but then that's part of some provisions that it says should not be done. And it's that's the amendment does not attempt to remove recorded covenants or restrictions. So again, after reviewing this and talking to city attorney, and I don't know if you want to add anything, Mrs. Garcia, but it does not appear that a plat amendment would be the way to try to change this. And I'm not sure, we're still kind of trying to figure out what would be the best way, but could you help me out with maybe explaining that a little bit better?
Right. So this ordinance that you're already seeing in front of you, it does mirror the local government code, the state local government code, chapter 212, section 212.016, which is exactly like this. And it states that basically amendments Plat amendments are only for clerical errors or minor modifications, minor changes, but not to completely change a setback. That's not the applicable procedure in this case.
So a couple of things that we could consider is a regular variance that we take to our zoning board of adjustments and appeals. Sometimes people build carports or different things that are encroaching on their front setback or rear setback, and they apply for a zoning variance to become compliant. You know, sometimes they build without a permit, and by the time we find out about it, we tell them, well, it's already too far built, so they don't want to take it back down. So they go for a variance to be able to keep it in its location, sometimes too close to the property line, encroaching on a variance. So we're trying to think of what would be the best way. Again, there's reasons why the developer wants to do this and make sure that they are, I guess, in a legal status with their buildings and in compliance status. So we do want to try to assist them with that. As I mentioned, it's in conformance with a lot of typical corner lots, having that 10 feet on the side like that. So I don't see any issue with it. It's just trying to work with what's the best way to do that. You want to
address some of these things? Okay. Thank you, Placido. Thank you, Commissioners. The reason why we're doing this, actually, this is just a legal minutia bit as best as I understand, because as Placido said, in the original plat of the Enchanted Ridge, it had 20-foot setbacks. On the replat that was approved and is currently recorded, the setbacks are 10-foot. However, there was an oversight when that replat was done that in doing the replat and changing those setbacks, it did not specifically say, the replat did not specifically say that the previous setbacks were vacated. And so I would suggest that was a Scribner's error, because the actual intent of the replat was to change, and has already been done, is to change those setbacks from 20 feet to 10 feet. So the current plats that are in effect are 10 feet. Like, I've told them, like, why do you care? I mean, that's my thought.
Was the building done after the replat?
No, the replat currently has 10 feet.
But yeah, but the actual building, was it built after the replat?
After the replat, yes.
Okay, so with the intention that it was a 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they were following, this is best that I understand, they were following the replat when the buildings were built. And so I understand all the things about the restrictions and so forth. What I would suggest to you, the number one line on the reason for having a plat amendment is to correct the Scribner's error. I would suggest to you that this would be considered a Scribner's error. And I think it says right up there at the top, where is it? Amending the final plat. Somewhere on there it says it's a Scribner's error. Something that was number 6, to correct any other type of Scribner or clerical error or omission as previously approved by the Planning Commission. Such errors or omissions may include, but not limited to, lot numbers, so on and so forth. And it's not limited to that. It doesn't say specifically setbacks, but it's not limited to that. They just didn't put on the previous plat that this is to vacate those previous ones, and the attorneys for the owner is saying, you got to do that. So that's why we're presenting this plat. That's the primary reason for presenting this, is to vacate those previous ones that are on the original plat and just say the ones that are on the current replat are effective. So it may help to clear up a little bit. Also, I would ask on the sidewalks, they're not building anything at this time. They may be building more storage. They have built the current owners have built sidewalk where the buildings are currently developed, and they are asking just simply to wait until they get the other buildings up, and they will continue the sidewalk on. Okay. Thank you.
So that is an important point. I'm glad he made that clarification, because I do see a path then if in the replat, they change these setbacks, I believe that is permissible. I don't think you can do that in a plat amendment, change those type of covenants or restrictions, but if they did it in the replat, and then at this point, we're just, as he mentioned, the Scrivener's error, I think I guess that would be if our city attorney concurs, but I think that we could,
So in the replat, it did have the 10.
That's
foot
correct.
setback.
that's correct.
And currently, the building is not within the 10-foot setback. It's only within the 20.
Yeah, and so,
But-
and for whatever reason, the replat says 10, for whatever reason, the attorneys say, well, that 20 may still be applied because it didn't specifically say, the replat didn't specifically say that the
Vacate.
previous ones are vacated. That's beyond, that's too nitpicky for me.
Well, I mean, with that detail, I think from our point of view, again, we would be in approval of this.
So if it was with the 10-foot setback, there wouldn't be a need for a variance if it was the way it was established with the replat.
But the actual replat doesn't have the 10 feet setback, that's the issue.
The
Was it
replat
10?
simply doesn't say that the previous 20-foot setback
Was
is
vacated, I understand that.
vacated.
But I'm just saying the way the building is built now, it's not
It's
within
not
the,
in
within the
violation.
10-foot setback.
No.
It's respecting the 10, so that
It's
is
the 10.
respecting,
Okay.
But if you do a
Side
survey,
setbacks.
it's gonna come out the
That
20,
gets
the
encroached
20 feet.
to the 20.
It's outside the 10-foot setback,
It's between the 10 and the 20.
yes.
So the issue is whether there was an error on is it 10 or 20, basically?
It was this only thing about it is there was an omission
Is it-
that they didn't say the previous setbacks are vacated.
Right.
That is the only defect in that replat, is there's no specification that the previous setbacks are vacated. And that's added on to this one. And that's the purpose of this.
I mean, I would suggest in this case, I would like to review the replat with Placido. I don't know if you would like to approve with the condition that as long as we review and verify that about the 10-foot setback in the replat. Okay.
So-
You could, if that's something you would want to consider, right? But
So if it is 10, then there wouldn't be a need for an amendment.
no, it's
They still-
No, there is, because the original has 20.
20,
When they replatted, it's only 10,
Right.
but they never vacated the 20, so.
So you
Right now
still
it's
want
20.
something to say that it's 10?
right.
Okay.
But I
and
would-
that's what the developers need
Yes.
for their attorneys to clear those issues.
Even though it's already in the replat?
right.
Correct.
We need an amendment to vacate the
Like
20.
the 20.
That's what they need, right? And I would just request that if
You
you
review
approve
the
that, it would be
replat.
on the condition that we verify that.
okay. And regarding the sidewalk, what was your recommendation? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I mean, we would love to get sidewalks sooner the better, but I think it's reasonable if you want to consider the request to wait till development of whatever storage is or whatever.
Is where I've seen the property, the first one, there is a storage there, that sidewalk's built already.
That one
and
is
then
built.
Next to it, on the, if
On
you're
the next
looking on
to it,
the
yeah.
left side.
Yeah.
On Veterans.
Those
where
ones
the
are not built
billboard
yet.
is, like, all that doesn't have, all that doesn't have
So I don't know
sidewalk.
if you could see here, let me see if I could zoom a bit. So it's not shown, this picture is a little bit behind, but they have constructed a sidewalk from here to the end of
The
this,
building.
of this building. So this property has the sidewalk already. It's the others
Three,
that are
right?
not
There's
built.
three.
The three lots do not have sidewalks.
I understand where they're coming from, where you might have that one building, but then the neighbor still a vacant lot, and there's nothing in there, so.
Right,
Yeah.
it's useless because then they have to come in and develop it, whether they sell it or keep it, I mean, okay. Do we have any other questions or comments?
My only concern with, probably it's gonna be, what's the repercussion of us doing this, and then somebody else comes in and say, you know what, I want a bigger space, I want,
For what,
there's a lot of empty lots on Veterans, that they will say, you know what, I want a 10 feet setback, and then we have to grant them based on this. No? Okay. Doesn't,
They have to go by the order.
It's a good point you're bringing up, but I don't think, this has certain situation that is
That is-
different than a
okay.
typical.
it's not your typical, okay, I want more space and,
If I can address that, Mr. Clerk.
In this case, we're correcting the plat that was already replatted some years back. If this came before the commission now, they would, I know they would enforce the current setbacks, and there would be 20
okay.
on that one lot, yeah.
The current setback by our ordinance is 10 feet.
Side setbacks are 10 feet for B1.
Yeah,
And it would be a front setback on that one, it would be 20.
20.
But we're ratifying the setbacks that are currently on the plat.
Okay. I'll make a motion with
Condition.
condition of reviewing the plot by Placido and our attorney.
And, on the sidewalk?
Granting the waiver? Or
Yes.
denying? the
No, no,
waiver?
granting the waiver.
Okay.
Granting the waiver, meaning that they don't need to do the sidewalk?
Until the lots are built, would be
Until the
what
lots are built
Or
or
developed.
are
Yeah.
developed.
developed.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Dirksen.
Thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Item number 5, consideration possible action of an ordinance amending Chapter 23 subdivision schedule of rates fees of the Code of Ordinances, revising and updating fees for subdivisions.
So I think we presented this to you guys already. Just for formality, we kept it on the agenda as we're going to be taking it to city council at the upcoming meeting, but there's nothing new here. If we don't have any questions, I don't think we need to get into the details again.
The same fees that we discussed last time, those ones are gonna be applying, okay.
Yes, and again, the main goal of this, for the public's sake, is we're just trying to be able to get closer to covering the cost of what it takes our city resources to perform inspections, reviews, the intake, administrative work for permits.
So then do we move on to item number 6?
I think you wanna,
Do we want
want
to
an
skip
action?
5 then, or table, or what are we doing?
I think you said
We still have this one as a no action, so we can
No
just move
action?
to the next.
no action?
Okay, so we jump to number 6?
Just consider
And
Possible
possible
action.
action, I know.
That doesn't mean you have to take it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
possible.
we had the wording, but yeah. So I guess if you want to recommend approval to council,
I'll make a
Up to,
motion
it's possible.
to approve as written.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
It was a motion to approve, correct?
He
Yes.
did,
Yes,
yeah.
the-
Luis did, he seconded,
Second, okay.
yes.
You're okay with it?
Yes,
You have any issues?
no issues. Item number 6, consideration possible action on amending Chapter 23, Article 2, Section 23 to 25 of the Code of Ordinances by removing preliminary plat approval by City Council and allowing preliminary plat approval by Community Development Director.
okay, so now I'm remembering. So we presented these last time. We did not have consideration possible
Right.
action last time. So now we're bringing them back so we can have that formal recommendation from P and Z to council. So this is another item that we covered. There's a House bill that allows the city to grant staff administrative approval on plats. And so our ordinance has 2 sections, a preliminary and a final. This is specifically on the final plat, and we do recommend making this amendment. It'll help speed up development and ideally make it more cost efficient for developers, and hopefully that can get passed on to a little bit less expensive lots. If there's any details that you'd like me to go over in more detail from last time, I can do that.
This will eliminate preliminary or final approval of plat? This is preliminary.
Okay, I'm sorry, so preliminaries first. Ultimately, we're going to be doing both. We're asking for your recommendation to approve both. The House bill does include all plats, both preliminary and final, but our ordinance has them broken out into two sections, so we'll need to bring them out in two sections, or two items.
So if approved, does it mean that the commission is not gonna see any preliminary or final plats?
If they're in full compliance, that's correct.
Okay.
If there's variances, we would be bringing that before the commission.
Variances come through us, or do they go through the zoning and appeals?
If it's a subdivision variance specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if it's something that comes under what's Chapter 23 subdivision code, that's the Planning and Zoning Commission jurisdiction area. The zoning ordinance variances go to zoning board.
So it would only be like that and CUPs, and what else?
And then,
Sidewalks fall under subdivision code, and
I think it said something about if somebody's not happy with your denial, I think, does it come to
Oh,
P and
like
Z
an
or
appeal?
city council?
there could be an appeal, correct?
That comes through us.
I believe that's what.
Okay.
Yeah, that's under C, I think, what he's referencing there.
Let's just hope everybody's happy with your decision.
So then if they're not happy with the decision that you would make, then they can appeal to the commission.
Yes, that's correct. And there is interest from council that they are wanting to transition to this for both our preliminary and final plats to be able to do that, so.
It's a lot faster, I feel.
And
Yep.
just a question, is there, or does it say anything about if in the future the city wants to go back to the way it is now?
So is this just an ordinance, and ordinances can always be amended, so if council or you will make a recommendation to council to change it, then the ordinance can be changed and go back. This is optional, it's not mandatory,
Right.
the House Bill.
And this is because of the state legislation that changed, we have that House bill, so we have to amend our ordinances according to that House bill.
Right,
So it is optional, and the city is choosing to do so.
So the city council it's, say, in favor of doing this.
Yes.
Yeah, but any items that are amending of the subdivision code, we should bring them before planning and zoning commission too, so that's this process. And ultimately, even if you recommended approval, they would make the ultimate call, they could still
Right.
deny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they are in favor of this.
Okay. Are we taking action?
It is, yes.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Item number 7, consideration possible action on amending Chapter 23, Article 3, Section 23 to 36 of the Code of Ordinances by removing final plat approval by City Council and allowing final plat approval by Community Development Director.
Yes, so as we mentioned, the previous one was preliminary. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for catching that. I had said it backwards the first time, but, so the one we just covered was preliminary, this one is for final, but same topic, same essential request here.
We'll entertain a motion, or are you?
I don't, if
It's
you'd
the
like me to
same
get
thing,
more
but it's-
details,
Same
Instead of,
thing, yeah.
but
you
we're.
don't have to go to city council, at the end of the day, they're gonna have to vote again, and, let me go outside, what do you think about this, Mr. Dirksen? You think it's gonna help the developer, it's gonna help everything go, run?
Smoother, faster.
Yeah,
I don't know that I quite understand it, honestly.
So this is, for plat approvals, bypassing, taking the items to the Planning and Zoning Commission and to City Council, and as long as they're in compliance with the city ordinance and state codes, then the Community Development Director has the authority to approve.
So the process, you turn in your plats, we review, we do subdivision review team meeting, we clean it all up, then we bring it here into city council. So with this new change, it eliminates bringing it to P and Z and council. If you've checked all the boxes and you're in compliance with everything, we approve right then and record.
For the final plat.
For
Both
both.
preliminary and final.
Preliminary and final.
So there would be an instance where there could be a circumstance where the planning and zoning and the city council would never see a plat.
Correct.
Right.
That's the one thing, I guess, that gives me a little bit of pause. For y'all's part,
Right,
as being the regulatory agency,
right.
that's your job is to see that,
And the public also, I mean, I don't know, I don't think these get,
at least once. And I understand.
And that was my concern, that at least we have to see either the preliminary or the final, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for.
But if they've checked all the boxes,
Right,
like,
so,
I'll still see that, that defeats the purpose of us being here. It's just gonna be limited to what.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I don't
the
know if
main
you've seen
push.
that on other cities. I know you work everywhere, Mr. Dixon.
What I was gonna say,
All cities have different kind of rules, setups. Usually, plats do have to go to the,
P and Z and
P and Z
council.
and city council, and really, a lot of it will depend upon what level it is, how complex it is, because there are some, like a plat amendment. If a plat amendment is changing one lot into two, or combining two into one, those would, and there's not a change to infrastructure, or say they have to do one put service, like in Chula Vista, they're changing a 1 acre lot into 2 half-acre lots, and they have to add 2 services. In many jurisdictions, that is something that is done by the planning director, and it's an administrative approval. Plat amendment would also, like on this one that we presented, that would be an administrative approval, and it wouldn't necessarily have to come before P and Z and city council. If there's something as simple as like just a scrivener's error on the thing. But if it is more than, I think, like in your code right now, there's a provision for a short form plat where you're creating less than 4 lots, and that's a short form plat. Those things sometimes are approved by just the planning director as an administrative plat. Anything beyond that typically does go to the P and Z and city council at least once. And sometimes most of the time it says to go twice, but actually we have one that's going in Uvalde now where the land is not platted, but they're creating 3 lots out of 1 parcel. No utilities are needed at this time, or no infrastructure is going to be constructed. It's all going to be constructed during development. That will go before P and Z and city council one time. And then the plat will be signed off and recorded. Because it is really considered to be a short form plat, and it's just not that complicated. They're not building roads or extending utilities for it. So there are different levels of it to consider, and I'd highly encourage some of the easier ones, the short form plats, that would, and like these little replats that keep coming through, that would certainly make things go faster. But, you know, you may want to exercise caution on the more complicated ones, and certainly master plans. So that's my thoughts.
So what about amendments, plat amendments,
it would still come,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So House Bill 3699 is the one that
Allows us.
allows this, right? This went through September 1st of 2023. Hasn't been around too long, and I don't know if maybe every city has adopted these provisions.
I'll be okay with that, us not seeing the pre-approval maybe, but the final, I think city council should be able to see it, or should see it. That's my recommendation.
Okay, and another thing is like, city council approves all the ordinances that allow, that gives the checklist, I guess you could say, right? So
Requirements.
they approve all these ordinances, and as long as the plat comes and checks off every ordinance and is not requesting a variance or anything
Special,
special, then you can think of it as these ordinances have already been approved.
right.
They come to you all, and then your recommendation goes to city council, right? So, it's not like the community development director is making up new provisions conditions
Or denying it, or based on something that he
So he
feels.
has the power to approve with conditions, or deny. And if you deny, you have to specify why, because it's not meeting certain ordinance or.
But it's not him, it goes through the review board, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But he.
He makes
or
the ultimate,
The
yes,
planning
yes,
director
yes,
is gonna
yes,
have the
yes.
ultimate.
Right, right,
Depending on all the criteria that's presented.
right. Yes.
And so this is kind of recent, and maybe this is something that we see throughout the state where this same scenario is playing out in different cities, right? Because
I
it's
just hear-
statewide.
I
Yeah,
feel
that's
it's
a
a
good
huge
point. So-
time saver for the developer.
They've always, I think Mr. Dirksen made the point, cities do plating, the process is a little different. Laredo's different from ours, you know, it's very nuanced. One that I follow closely is Seguin. They're kind of close in population like us and growing, you know, so I don't know, I look at them a lot because they're a similar kind of type of city. They had just completed this process, I think around November, December, where they made the conversion to approve plating administratively, like that we're presenting here. Prior to that, though, one thing that's I think noteworthy, their plating process only went to P&Z, did not also go to council. So again, everybody does it a little bit different, and it's up to each municipality to choose those things. Like we can in our charter, it's a charter ordinance, I think it's charter, dictate, you know, and so it was decided here locally that we wanted both P&Z and council. But again, all those things come at a cost. It's, you know, that's another 2 weeks or so to get from one meeting to the next. And the whole idea, I think the whole lobbying effort that went into why this House bill went into effect is the developers pushing, saying like, if we met all the requirements and we checked all the boxes, what's the point of making us wait another couple of weeks to go to these public meetings when, I mean, you have to approve it. If there's nothing wrong with it, it needs to be approved anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what was the backstory, I think, from all this. But I do see the point that, I mean, we would maybe want to see it at least once. Maybe we could look at that change to where it only goes to one, either just the commission, not council, or vice versa, to at least save some weeks, because from, you know, this is the second
Yeah,
Thursday.
definitely.
Luckily, it's a short week, so we have council next week, but sometimes there's a 2-week period in between these
And
meetings.
if we don't have quorum, we have to wait. The
That's
developer
another
has to
good
wait.
point. Yeah.
And if they have a loan at the bank, they're paying interest.
They can't get a loan at the bank until they get the
Fact check.
So, they don't pay interest.
So either way, this will be a recommendation to council. Ultimately, you know, they're making the ultimate call on what we do here, but we'll definitely share the sentiments that you're making when we present again to them.
So do we have a motion?
You make the motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
You're not gonna second?
You say that.
I'll second. All those in favor? Item number 8, consideration possible action on amending Chapter 23 subdivisions, Article 5, Parkland dedication of the Code of Ordinances.
So this item we brought back at the request of the commission. We have I think one of the biggest things is the dollar amounts, and we have a table at the end of the ordinance. We also have the draft ordinance that we had worked on some time back in your packet. I don't know if there's any specific details in there you'd like to cover, but a big part of parkland dedication is trying to maintain a number of acres per population. And in this case, I think the data that we have shows there's 1 acre of parks for every 129 residents. So that's essentially our ratio. If we have, say, 50 new homes come in, and I think the number is, it's on here. For single family, it's 3.6, the average number of homes, and so that's the number we use. there'll be about 180 new people. So if a new subdivision comes in and we do not add, sufficient parkland, now all of a sudden we have more people per acre of parkland. And so it keeps weakening or getting kind of watered down if we don't have something that keeps it on a on a even level of keeping up with the population growth. But it does come at a significant cost. We've invested quite a bit of money with the recent Villa Romel Park. I think the total cost in that ended up around $1 million, or maybe just over $1 million. And it's not a big park. It's I believe that one's a little over 1.5 acres, maybe somewhere around 1.6. So in looking at the numbers, even the numbers we have here, I think are still kind of estimating on the short side, and that includes $20,000 per acre of land, of raw undeveloped land that could be converted to parkland. That may be on the low side. Some of you are in development and banking, so I'm not sure if you guys would know if 20,000 is reasonable for undeveloped land. But then that comes out to, when you divide out the population numbers, it eventually would come out to about $555 per lot to be able to have that equivalent value per acre. But that's only for the land. The other thing that we have to really consider is that vacant land is still not a park. A lot of amenities would need to be put onto that. So that's where we get to the two-part. Many cities have already gone to a two-part: park land and park improvement dedication. So they're essentially trying to cover the money to both get land and put a park improvement on it. Otherwise, we get into the situation that we have. Sometimes we get dedication of land, like Hunter Park in the Bass subdivision. I think we have about 7 acres, and we're still seeking, trying to get the funding. We have to go out for a bond, possibly, to borrow money to develop that. But we got the land dedicated, but there was no funds, so it sits for sometimes several years before we can actually build out park improvements. So when we come to the improvements, using a average cost per acre of $350,000, I'm not sure if you guys are following on that table there, but when you divide it again by the 36, which is utilizing the how many number of people per household, the factor in by acre, and so that comes out to almost $10,000. So realistically, that's a gigantic amount per lot that would be tacked on. 10,000 for the improvement, 555, so 10,300 per lot to try to keep up with that. And I'll be honest, 350,000 is, I'm not sure if it's enough based on what we just did at Villa Romel. Again, that was not even 2 acres, and that cost us about $1 million. So this is, even these numbers are still low. So again, the numbers to get to where we need to be, it's just, we're nowhere close. But again, it's important. I'm glad that the commission has to bring this back. I think we should at least be trying to get closer. And one thing that is done and was recommended by Dr. Crompton, who is I guess expert in the field, who helped us with this through a grant. We got covered the fees for his services to help us review and come up with this. Typically, when there's a far gap like that, they do a phased deal. Maybe you get to 50% or 60% of the number you're trying to get to in year one, or maybe next fiscal year. And then the following fiscal year, you try to get to maybe 80% of that goal target number. And so where over 2 or 3 or 4 years, you gradually get to the number that you need to. But ultimately, until we do that, we're kicking the can down the road and essentially just putting it back on the city and the general taxpayers to figure out when are we going to borrow money to build a new park to try to keep us caught up. So those are the key details on the numbers. There's some other things in the paragraph section, but I think that those, probably the biggest things to think about, unless you all have other specific questions on what's being proposed or what we had drafted previously. And this is for for residential.
Residential, yeah.
Yeah, because it does all tie to population and new homes. So commercial is not, would not be
Does,
part of this.
does other cities, get grants, a lot of grants to do these types of parks? Because once you go to San Antonio, Laredo, and it's like, every colonia has a park. And that's just a small park, it's a huge park, where they have 3 soccer fields, 5 basketball courts, and I don't know if it's the city is the one that pays for it, or they get grants.
It's
So-
a developer, no?
I don't
They
think,
have part-time dedication fees and, I used to work in the city of Laredo, and, some, it's the HOA that could be creating the park. Because there's several HOAs over there, and so some of them are owned by the HOA, and some of them are city parks, and they're created based off these part-time dedications. But the issue that they are having over there is that there's so many pocket parks now, in like different subdivisions, and they're being, having trouble maintaining them all.
that's the other issue, that once you do a park, you have to maintain it, if not, it's gonna go to waste. And it costs the city a lot of money to do that. Just cutting the grass.
Yep, great point, the maintenance.
the main-
Even if all the costs are covered by
Right.
the development, maintenance,
Yeah.
it becomes,
It's
grows
very
and grows, the
expensive.
more parks that we would accumulate. That's another good point.
And just not enough personnel to
Handle
be out there,
everything.
taking out the trash, picking up the litter, or whatever the situation is. So they kind of wanted to move away from the pocket parks.
So what's the proposed fee on, or what is it that you're proposing?
Like he said, that gradually, maybe
So-
we might be able to get this move up, like the fee. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're,
like-
we're at 1,150, 1,150 per lot for single family right now. And it's again a one-part deal. It's just, it's not a land and park improvement component like what I'm talking about. So we have just the one. I think anything where we move closer to a 2-part and just get closer to the actual cost. And then that's even hard to keep up with because lately inflation has been a little higher than typical. So, again, that would be another issue. Even if we set a number, as a couple years pass, we may kind of start falling behind again. But there was a plan B that was, Dr. Crompton assisted us because we pretty much told him that's crazy, too high, we'll never be able, that's.
Nobody's
just not-
gonna
nobody's
develop
gonna go for
anymore.
that. Yeah, nobody would be able to afford it. So, a Plan B cost estimate was put together. I mean, ultimately, the reality, we changed the numbers here. That doesn't change what it's really gonna cost to develop, but we switched it to a $100,000 to develop per acre of parkland. And it factors down, reduces things out to where it's 27, almost 2,800
Per lot.
per lot, plus the 555, the land associated. And so then that comes to a per lot of 3,390 for single family, and for multifamily, 2,192, because the factor's a little bit lower for the multifamily. So ultimately, I would really recommend we just move closer, and how we do it, and I like the idea of staggering it, whatever number we're shooting for. I think we do it in phases over years, where we do maybe, we hit the 60% mark, year one, maybe, I don't know if we want to do it as slow as 10% increments each year, or 20%. But I do really believe we got to do something, or we're going to just be relying on the general fund and borrowing money to keep up with our parks.
So what's the average sale price for a home? That
For a
like
lot,
well,
right
for a
now.
home, if somebody buys a lot in a house, how much is that?
What's the
Average.
In
Like
this
if somebody
case,
wants
it's a
to,
developer.
just as a,
Entry level, maybe 220,000, what would you say is starting
I
now?
would say
280,
right now,
290.
280.
280
Anything
for
over
entry.
250.
My
yeah.
goodness.
so if we do that, it's about a 1% increase. Like it's a 1% out of the.
Of the total cost.
the
Yeah, new
cost.
construction in let's say the Lipson subdivision, right now, on the low end, you're talking about a $297,000 home. Low end, high end, $365,000.
That's a good point, so putting in
You're talking about
perspective, about
adding
a
that
1%.
To that.
And not necessarily adding the whole 1%, because we are at 1150 now, so it's the difference of those two, but let's call it another
Right. I guess
2,000.
that, right.
Usually the way, if I'm not mistaken, usually the way that it is down, right now, it's like, I won't give you money, I will just give you land.
Right, but they have to accept the land,
Yeah,
and they're not accepting, like, they have a surplus of land.
yeah,
Now
that's,
they have
that's,
to develop it,
and get some money out of it.
yeah.
That's another good point. So if there's already other parks nearby, there's factors that Parks Department looks at to see is it suitable. You know, a developer may have some land that would be difficult to develop or not as, you know, easy to. So they say, okay, well, this would be great. I can't do much with it. Let me
Yeah.
give that as parkland. But it needs to still be usable as parkland too. You know, if it's going to be,
Yeah, because they just might give you the land that's on a hill that it's not usable, and
yeah.
It could be a detention, a
Plus, yeah.
second detention pond.
then
But
you
is
build a
it,
detention pond so we.
Yeah, yeah. The one on Flowers.
A two-part, land and dedication, or it's either or?
I would recommend a two-part. I mean, it could, ultimately, the dollar amount just needs to go up. It could still stay as one item if we like. It doesn't change too much. But the pot of money just needs to be higher to where we can actually come closer to keeping up with the parks, or at least have less that the city would need to borrow or pull from general funds.
Because you have like,
The other concern is that once, if we start doing this, even the people and the developer, they wanna say, well, where's my money? What did you do with it? And at the end of the day, the city has to do something with that money. And I just say, well, we don't have enough, then they're gonna say, well, so, you know what I'm trying to say?
because it's not enough.
I know, I understand, but if you take away money, and they keep the money, and they're gonna demand something, the city, the developer might say, well, the city has the money, and then the city can't do anything because it's
not enough.
way too expensive to cover it with that money. So at the end of the day, there has to be something besides just getting the money and then not following through with doing something. That's my concern. Then also, everybody's gonna say, well, the city's gonna keep the money, and they're not doing anything with it. And again, you know how it is.
But that's like, I mean, the budget, like, all that's public, right? Like,
And then plus, on the fees collected on the, for the parkland, that has to be spent on parkland. Cannot be taken and spent on
Yeah,
office
good,
supplies or whatever.
yeah, great point. Those come out here in some of the previous chapters or the sections here, but the fees do need to be used specifically for new or existing park improvements, cannot be used for operations. So it can be just for
So
staffing,
it's not
cutting the
like the city's
grass.
gonna pocket the money.
It's
and just not
actually
do anything.
improvements.
And it's gotta be utilized within the 7 years from the users.
There is a provision for that. Yep, it's the last section in this packet before the table. And that's on 2386, right to refund. And that's already in our current ordinance as well, so that's basically keeping what we have as a 7-year.
Usage for that money.
Yep.
So do you have a recommendation or what you're gonna recommend to city council?
I think that Plan B is
yeah.
maybe the most reasonable thing to consider, and maybe we recommend breaking that into phases. So again, that's nearly $2,000 more than what is a current parkland dedication fee in lieu. And so,
So the land component and the Plan B. You're gonna do two.
Well, it's the same one we had right now, plus now it's the 2007 for the,
Versus, what is it,
For the
1150?
1150 is a current for single family.
But what you have now is only land or the fee currently.
Correct. So yeah, like the way you're looking at this, they have at the summary, two amounts, 555 plus
2000.
2777. Essentially, right now, we only have the first one, a land version.
The
So
land.
this one would be less for just the land, but then adding the improvement part, which the total then would be much higher than where we currently are. And I do believe in this concept of separating the two, because you get just money for land, you don't have anything to build it. So I think
How
that's-
does Seguin do it this case? Have you seen
I
that?
need to review theirs again. I don't recall, I didn't look at theirs, recently on that one. I can review that and get back to you guys.
That would be good, like maybe you check other cities similar to.
He had
to ours.
before.
We did have that in a
Okay.
previous, a
Sorry.
table on kind of city, but yeah, I forgot to bring that back here.
Is it not on the slide for the weeks?
I think it was like McAllen,
No,
um,
it was a whole table that.
it was like 4.
But that's a good point. We could bring that back, and that varies too. Just like I talked about, plating processes are different. Some cities actually are in the $10,000-$12,000 per, and they're getting, but, those are higher cost of living, higher quality of
Yes.
life. The bigger cities where, people, I guess, can't afford those things, that would be very difficult here with our median income and, economics here. But yeah, it is a huge change, or drastic differences on that. But yeah, I could bring that back.
Just so we can compare.
Any other thoughts or questions on this item?
No. Are we taking action?
I'm good with approving, but I understand if anyone wants to see more information.
Do you want
Yeah.
some more?
I would like to see some comparables to see what other cities are doing, if we're in line with it, or we're really, really, really behind, so we can probably, maybe instead of the 2,000, it might be 3,000 or 4,000 that we should be asking for. I know.
So we just want to table it?
A little more.
And then plus another comment. I don't know if this is something that you want to bring kind of every year or every couple of years to kind of keep up with the fee, see if we need to be changing it. Because I think last time you had mentioned that it hasn't been looked at in many years.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that would be a good provision that, I don't know if 5 years is often enough or a good amount of time, but at some interval, we bring it back and reevaluate the costs to build parks and maybe also compare the other cities where they're at. I wasn't sure if I'll be able to find it quickly. I think this might be it. Let me see, population,
Yeah.
current level, fee in lieu. Yeah, I believe this is it. This is probably,
Single
this is
family and
probably
multi.
already a few years dated, based off of a book that where I remember we were referencing. But it's here on the right, so single-family dwelling unit and multifamily dwelling unit. So some have, let me see. No, I'm not sure this is exactly the one I was looking for, but you can see they do vary quite a bit, 300,000,
250,
250,
2,160,
1,400, 2,100.
700 in Houston.
But yeah, I can bring this up and hopefully find a newer one, because the last time that we did bring it, that data was a few years old then, and so that's already probably another 1 or 2 years.
So I guess we'll table this for now.
Yes.
Okay. Motion?
I make a
Table.
motion.
All second. All those in favor? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Time now is 6:35 PM. Thank you.
Sometimes when the uppercase,
Yeah, it's
hard. I lowercase it. I used to, but in these